Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another Saturday show, and I'm joined again with my old sparring partner, Mr. Dickson. So I'm hoping to have a few issues that will fire up that inner burn that he so easily allows us all to feel warm. It's like a furnace of opinion, Stephen. And you're looking well there, mate. New pose, new position.
New pose, new position, new week, Chris. And
new week, mate. Yeah, and who knows what this week is going to bring? Everything seems to up and down and in and out. And oh my goodness me, we need a little bit of continuing good news, I think. But listen, we did an earlier podcast, and I just want to give a little shout out. We did it. It was a guy called Steve Smith, who's the president and CEO of Airlink, and he's based in Washington, and he was telling us about all of the humanitarian work he does, and we cover the NGOs and the difficulties and some of the logistics within the logistics that are challenges. And it was really interesting, but also great what they're doing. Fantastic what the carriers are doing that's supporting them, and they're really focusing at the moment on the situation in India. So anyhow, that will be coming out on Monday or Tuesday. But fair play to Steve and his team for doing what they're doing. Great thing. And it just shows how much the aviation community cares. So it's a lovely thing.
Yeah, it's I think he won't be alone, Chris, or unique. I mean, I've seen there's been so much collaboration and camaraderie. Yeah, spirit that those have shown in terms of supporting the effort to help our brothers and sisters in India has been second to none. So I've seen photographs of airlift efforts from Qantas in Australia, Virgin Atlantic and British Airways here in the UK. Lufthansa were one of the first in. It's great to see, and I think that spirit of people doing the right thing for the right reasons, without any real commercial return, is actually what humanity is all about.
Yeah, and like we've said many times, Steve, hopefully the one thing that will come out of this is that there'll be a better degree of care, genuine care.
Exactly.
Doing things in a different way. And one of the points we made with Steve was how good would it be if, if there was a sort of a regular slot or a regular spot at these conferences that always covered humanitarian effort and how the community helps the rest of the world, so that people started to see what we were all doing sometimes, which is the very best of everything, and make people feel proud, more proud than they are at the moment. I don't think that would be a bad thing.
Idea, Chris. I think as we said many months ago, the air cargo business was completely undervalued and underrated. By I think everybody. I think wherever you look, people didn't understand the impact of not having capacity or air cargo capacity, and the impact it would have on medical supplies, food supplies, electronic items, etc., pharmaceuticals, stuff that is so critical at this time. And therefore, we are still, we're still really capacity squeezed, if you like. We haven't moved much beyond that. And therefore, people have had to work much harder, much smarter, to derive solutions that were, they just, they came organically before. Now they've had to be contrived and built from scratch. And I think that is all testament to the smart people, professionals that we've got working in our industry amongst us.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely superb. And something else I was reading as well. I mean, people are now starting to realise if they can't get their asparagus or they can't get certain things, it's because of how it's transported. But one of the things that people tend to overlook is, the consumer electronics. And the chips, even the chips, and I've just this week I was talking to a guy about a motorbike, and he was saying how well the prices are holding and how shortage it is, and he said some of it is to do with the chips that are necessary now and the shortage of getting them across and things like that. I mean, it's amazing how the stone drops in, but the ripples just keep going and going and going, and no matter how far the bank is, it eventually hits it.
Well, absolutely. And look, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned asparagus there, because this is it's a very short English asparagus season, but the best asparagus in the world is from not too far from where you are. What I would say is, it's brought into question, or brought more highlighted, I guess, the impact of you know, on the environmental impact on that's generated by food and you know, moving foodstuffs around that actually don't have to be moved around. And the Green Tree Hugger Brigade, you know, will all dictate that
the fires are burning.
Sorry,
I said we've entered the furnace. Lovely, there it is. The flame has ignited. Beautiful.
Well, it doesn't take much, Chris. Have you noticed?
I've noticed, mate. I've noticed. Yeah.
As I get older, my wife would say it takes less and less.
Yes. Yeah. Well, tell me about it.
The point is, those that claim that that eating meat is bad for the planet and bad for the environment, actually, are quite the contrary. Whilst they get their quinoa and their avocados and all that crap from all over the world, you know, I'm quite happy on a Friday night to eat in my local restaurant outside, obviously, with beef that's come from Hereford, just down the road, with tatties that have been grown up in Lincolnshire or near Peterborough, and vegetables and English asparagus. I mean, how fabulous is that? Yeah. So don't tell me what I can and can't eat because meat is bad for the environment. What a lot of nonsense. But look, on a slightly more serious note, I think it does bring into question sort of you know, the need for people to use you know, air travel as means of flying all these foodstuffs around the world to satisfy their unique taste buds, of which I've got very few. I'm quite happy with the steak and chips, to be perfectly honest. So suits me fine.
Happy days, yeah. I'm going to come up and join you. Yeah,
you were supposed to be here today, but I don't know. You had some other issues today you were contending with.
Yeah, Spain. Yeah, I might still come up. But the reason I brought up about the chips was because of China Airlines and you know, having to reduce now the freighter fleet because of the fact that they've got to quarantine their crew. And, you know, we're coming back to this again now, you know, and what they're trying to do and what certain parties are doing now because of you know, worrying about the variants. And then you look on the other side and you got British Airways who, you know, they're now going to roll out, or they're trialing this, you probably know it better than me, this Pelican COVID-19 test or whatever, where you can get the results back in 25 seconds. And if that happens and it becomes cheaper and faster, I mean, that's the way forward.
So look, I didn't know. Nice of you think that I'd know more than you on that, Chris, but actually I don't on this one. I haven't followed it in detail. I only saw it announced yesterday or whatever came out externally. I've not spoken to my colleagues in BA yet, but I'll arrange a pint in due course so I can see what's going on below the radar. But no, look, anything that advances the ability to get a semblance of normality. Now, yeah. I know normal, and you said, you know, I don't like new normal. I never liked that phrase. We used it a lot, or the world used it a lot. I just like normal. The old normal was perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. So let's just go back to normal. To help us get there, there has to be a roadmap, I guess, you know, and there has to be some transitionary stages that we go through that might include things that I don't particularly like COVID passports or whatever, apps on phones to check for tests and so on. So even when COVID load in the community is so low, there's still a need to do testing. The same thing with government. You come back from a green country, still would do a bloody COVID test. Well, what's the point of the country being green then, may I ask? What's the point of us having vaccinated nearly 40%, fully vaccinated now in the UK population? 60%, or it might be more now this week, that have had their first vaccine. So there's more and more opportunities to reduce some of these measures or remove some of these measures. But meantime, whilst they still exist, I advocate that British Airways is probably doing the right thing and trying to get quick fire, rapid results.
Yeah.
They can get their crew back in the air. They can help get their customers back in the air. The same bollocks that you and I were talking about earlier about where to get a test done. Where do I go for a PCR test? How do you get a test done? Oh, is it 70 days before departure, 70 days before arrival? Oh, it's before arrival in Spain, but it's before departure in the UK. I mean, really, you know, this just puts people off, and they will go to the caravan in Great Yarmouth or Morecambe Bay or you know, I hear Cornwall's quite nice this time of year, Chris.
It is, mate. It is. Yeah. And it's totally isolated. A beautiful, beautiful part of the country.
You know, so
beautiful part of the world.
Whilst there are complexities and there are layers that still exist, they will still prevent people from traveling in the free, easy way that they were used to before. So anything we can do to make that more seamless is an advantage.
Yeah, no, good on British Airways and the company that are doing it. It's a medical tech company called Canary Global. So good on them as well. Fantastic. Now, on the British Airways theme, and we come back to, if anybody can, Willie can. So the ascendancy of Mr. Walsh in the IATA community. And I thought it was interesting, and I think you definitely listened to it on CAPA during the week, but he's talking about a sense of purpose, you know, and by better serving and representing its airline members. Great stuff, good stuff. And then the one I thought was very good was he said, you know, to rethink how it operates to the benefit of the members, and where he felt that, you know, inwardly that they were focusing on themselves too much, a bit too bureaucratic, understatement to say the least. But now they're now realizing that, you know, they're not the leader of the industry, nor the leader in the industry, but they've got to start doing things now that make a difference for the members. So I think fair play to him, and he really now needs to put a stamp on it, because if he gets the momentum going, he'll get an awful lot of support from all the rest of the representative bodies who feel that they almost have to bow down to what IATA says and what they do. Otherwise, everybody else won't take it seriously, because they don't have an accreditation like the one that IATA can give or put on a piece of paper or a stamp. And that's the rubbish. That's the rubbish. So the real issues, Willie, because we've got, I'm not sure how many thousand T-shirts we've got on order, Steve, in beautiful red, white and blue colouring. But the dangerous goods issue, Willie, you've got to sort it out. Undeclared dangerous goods in e-commerce. It's not a fair playing field. And also the ongoing paperless, I mean, the amount of paper that's involved in cargo, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
If you get that in, David Ambridge would be very upset with you, Chris. So airway bills is the way forward.
Yes, yeah, but yeah, Dave, Dave will definitely comment one way or the other. So hopefully it'll be positive. But to fair play to him, he was talking about, you know, will it make a difference? I think Willie's got a chance now to make a difference, and it doesn't have to be huge. They don't have to change the world. They just got to go back to basics so people can start to see that logical, common sense things are being addressed, and for once they're being done. What he's got to have is, instead of being so bureaucratic and self-serving, bless you, he's got to now, I think, focus on being brave enough to, you know, to name and shame when people don't do certain things. And if they don't do certain things, start to exclude them from other things, and start making people realize if you're part of a club and there's some club rules, play or go up in the stands and watch.
Chris, I totally agree. I mean, I think we had this conversation when Willie was first announced as Director General and CEO of IATA, and I said some rather disparaging things about the incumbent that was holding the post and the former leaders of IATA. I didn't say that, you know, because I was being rude, or I was being overly critical of the leadership or lack thereof that they showed in IATA. Yeah. I was actually trying to express a view that I felt in my time in airline leadership roles, that I felt that all of the issues that we had seen that had been developing and brewing for years and had never been tackled by IATA was because IATA were trying to justify their existence and justify this, create this almost self-fulfilling prophecy, or almost sort of prophesizing, I guess, sort of pontificating, if you like. And actually not many of the members bought into it. IATA was designed by the member airlines, particularly the board members and the leading members of IATA. So, I mean, the Lufthansa, the BAs, the Air Frances, the Americans, the Deltas, the Qantas, the Cathys of the world, and maybe, a sprinkling of others, but 12, 15 airlines. IATA was designed to only serve those carriers. Everybody else below that kind of rank or position was forgotten about. The service providers were forgotten about. If you were a ground handler, you were lowest in the food chain, not recognizing the importance of each and every player in the industry, and that we all had voices, and that we all wanted to add to and contribute to the betterment of our industry. Yeah. So that was why
together.
That was why I was critical of Alexandra or Giovanni or Tony and all the others that have been there. because I thought they completely wasted their opportunity to transform that organization.
But I think, Steve, as well, sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to conclude. Just so
go on.
Last sentence. In conclusion, the reason that I made those statements before, and we edited them down a little bit, if you remember, we watered some of them down before it was broadcast, but that was wise, I suspect. But the reason that I was so passionate, Chris, was because I wanted somebody like Willie to take the bull by the horns, and Willie to sort of shake the tree and really kind of find the opportunities for change that some of the great people that are in IATA don't. Always remember, these people are industry professionals like us. They've been around the business. They're in the business. They work in airlines. They work in ground. They know their shit, but they couldn't get the teeth, or they didn't have the teeth to actually to drive change forward, to deliver change. And what I heard from Willie on Wednesday was exactly what I've been wanting to hear since we heard of his announcement, and that's why I was so happy that Willie had taken up the charge. And he said specifically that they need a more inclusive organisation. He to start listening better. They need to serve. He specifically said they need to serve all members, not the loudest voice. And I just thought, yeah, beauty. That's exactly what I want, and that's why I was so passionate last time. And that's why, if in maybe overstating my aversion to the previous management of IATA, I was really chuffed that Willie now is singing from the hymn sheet that I think you, me, and many of the people listening to this podcast, Chris, will probably agree with.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Steve. What I was going to say, though, is that during the cycle of management and who's in charge and what they're in charge of, there's a certain cycle that if you're of a certain type and you're in the wrong part of the cycle, you can be less effective than if you were in a different part of the cycle. So you've got the people who come in when there's problems and they start also ruffling feathers and, throwing up everything into the air. Then you've got the people coming behind them who stabilize and flatten it down. Then you got the people who come in and sell and say how great it is. And then you got the politicians. So depending where they are, and also the timing and the external influences. But now coming out of this pandemic, plus Willie and his nature, plus everything, it's a combination. It's almost like as if somebody has put the ingredients in a pot and you can start smelling how nice it's going to taste. But he's got to make sure he delivers and doesn't tip the pot over. So hopefully he'll do it, and then we'll make a fortune from, if anyone can, Willie can, t-shirts. Bring back better. Okay, so that'll be one good thing. Now, not such a good thing, Heathrow Airport, still with epoxy 6-hour queues, and also now that reference that they might even start to look to divert flights if the queues keep as long as they are and don't improve in any way. Now, how terrible is that to make a statement like that? It's terrible, Steve.
Nice little threat, I suspect, there by John Holland Kay against the government. Will it come down to that? No, of course, you and I know it will not come down to that. They will not be diverting aircraft to Schengen EU, that's for sure. I think, however, what it does demonstrate, Chris, is how palpably angry and frustrated HAL is with the inability for Border Force to have some balls and conviction and get their trade unions in order so that these clowns in the union that represent their cohorts of workers can actually get back to work, can man the desk properly, can get back to full manning. And if they don't want to do that, then kick him out and bring in a private contractor to do it. Because whilst these people are employed and paid for by the taxpayer and employed and paid for by the user charges through the immigration charges, they need to get their shit in order, they need to get their house in order. So I sense the frustration from HAL. HAL takes so much, sorry, for those that are not aware, that's Heathrow Airport Limited, sorry, gone back into my colloquialisms. HAL, I used to work for HAL once upon a time. It was the British Airports Authority then, those days. British an airports authority. It sounds really important, actually. It's like working for the fucking civil service. Never,
we got a little bleep there, my friend.
Never worked anywhere more bureaucratic and boring in my entire life. Anyway, that said, Heathrow Airport Limited takes the flak. It's a private company. They take the flak. They take the criticism. People don't realise, the public, the ill-informed, educated public that are arriving at Heathrow don't realise that it's Swissport that handle the airplane, or it's Donata that handle the cargo, or it's it's Border Force. That's Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
So all of those issues, whatever happens at Heathrow, from the minute that you arrive in the car park on departure to, getting on the bus or the train on arrival, it's poor Heathrow Airport's fault. Yeah. So I completely understand the frustration of John Holland-Kay and his team. I completely understand why Chris Garton, top bloke, by the way, the chief solutions officer for Heathrow, ex-COO of Dubai airports. But I completely understand why they're up in arms with the government. So the government have got to get that together. They've got to get the Public Services Union or the Immigration Services Union, whatever the hell they're called, and get this lot, back into toe the line and get the border man properly. Yeah,
no, totally agree. And there's so many options out there, and there's so many people willing to work alongside them. It just beggars belief, Steve, as far as I'm concerned. I cannot understand why somebody just doesn't say, right, we got 2, 3, 4 companies who say they can come up with solutions. Let's have a look at it, put them all on a trial for a short period of time, see which one makes the difference, and then take it on board. Why aren't they doing something? It's madness.
Yeah.
But going back to positivity, and Willie and stuff, if he starts making those differences, Steve, I was just thinking, the journalists that we got, especially on the cargo side, I think they're tremendous. And the stories that they've had to cover and some of the frustrations where there's so many panels and working groups and solution teams and success teams and stuff, it's too much. And I think everybody now needs to come together, a few basics, really prioritize them, let people realize how critical they are, work on them, and start having something that our great journalists can actually really get their teeth into. And I can imagine Alex or Thelma or Will, just loving to have a story whereby there's some real tangible benefit and clarity as to what's going to happen moving forward.
We need to get them an invite to the government press briefings at 5 p.m.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now,
is it exactly 1 hour, Chris? It's now 4 p.m. on Friday. Sorry for the Saturday show, but we're recording on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So the illusion has been just disbanded.
Yeah, no, but it has chopped and changed. We have done it on Saturdays. We've done it on Sundays. So we've had the benefit of hindsight and forecasting. So, Friday late afternoon's a nice way to finish the week with your gracious company, mate. So I'm more than pleased. Now, something to get that little furnace going again, something I read as well. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's written 1,000 complaints to Southend Airport about night flights. And, but he says how long he's lived at the airport. That's another thing that I find amazing. Most people that I know, right, and I grew up around the airport. So, when my family moved from Shepherd's Bush into Hamworth and then into Feltham, that's when I first knew there was an airport there. But once you did, and you got
W4 boy from Chiswick, Chris.
No, Shepherd's Bush, Chiswick, and then a lovely little place called Barnley Close in Hamworth, and then Buckingham Avenue in Feltham. But what I'm getting at is the housing at the time was possibly a little bit cheaper there because you were close to an airport, etc. But that meant you were also closer to work. But then when people started getting on the bandwagon of complaining and stuff, I mean, if you decide to move close to the sea, that there's going to be salt water effect on everything that you've got. So why would you then complain about the sea? I just don't understand it.
You get sea fog for 200 days of the year. Yeah,
I just don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? I really don't. And especially now when people are appreciating how important it is. And before, when there was the slot issues and certain airports were restricted with, nighttime curfews, etc. If you want the wheels of the whole logistics chain to keep turning, you've got to give people the opportunity. So when the passenger side starts to come back again, there's got to be a readdress of that, because otherwise it's going to be, it's going to be all over the place again.
Look, I mean, different where, there may be, new airport builds or extensions to airports, and they're buying up land and they've got compulsory purchase orders to buy your property. I guess that could be days.
Happy days. I wish somebody would compulsory buy mine. Yeah. Get a little bit of an upgrade.
I can't see Heathrow moving out your way, Chris. That'd be slightly problematic.
Be a long old runway, wouldn't it?
So it's like London City extension for me along the river here.
Along the river, yeah.
Look, I guess that you understand people's frustration, maybe history, family home, you know, a lot of history and pedigree with it. But you're right. When people move in next to an airport, they benefit from the ecosystem that airport creates.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I do get my kill. I mean, look, it's never. I mean, I used to live in Essex. And lived in a little village called Little Easton, which is just right next to Stansted Airport. And you know, we used to get the 4 a.m. or the 3 a.m. sort of TNT as it was then, the DHL now, I guess. But you know, UPS flights taking off A300s and 727s and all that jazz. You know, yeah. I'd Thatch Cottage, which is cracking little spot, but you know, the whole roof was going to sort of just cave in. You know, these things taking off top. Actually, having lived there then for about 12 months, I became completely immune to it. Now maybe it's because I work at the airport, but I don't think so. I mean, whether you work at the airport or not, you tend to suffer from ambient issues, and you just became immune to it. So I get my people that say that this is, you know, destroying their lives. Well, actually, why don't you run off to Somerset or Norwich or somewhere? You probably get a house about 3 times the size for the same price. Yeah.
No, there's like I said, it's I just, you know, I just think, oh my goodness me.
That's what to say, Chris. I mean, the argument, it's a different point, but the argument is the principle is the same, or sort of reinforces it, which is, you know, you look at noise contours from what they were 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's an incredible difference.
All of the stuff that we've done, or industry's done with airspace design and technology, and then what they've done with power plants and reduction in noise, reduction in emissions, you know, things like continuous descent approaches, CDAs, or you know, expedited departures, etc., and then the switching. You know, a lot of the stuff that we've done in industry has helped reduce the noise contours, the noise profile over time. So actually, when you think about what was, you know, bloody great, you know, 707 coming in over the top. Right. Yeah. Compared to you know, a 78 these days, which, I mean, I'm right on the flight path here, coming onto you know, so on this side next to the river on the Thames is the approach for 27 right, and on the other side just over that is 27 left, and you can hardly hear them now. I mean, you really can hardly hear them now. So I think people have got to also remember that that rules that were designed 30, 40 years ago, night quotas, etc., should all be up for debate now. We should be opening up Heathrow for more hours of the day, you know, and using the technology that we've had available to us to reinforce that point.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So hopefully another little bit of common sense will prevail when we come out of this. Now, something that you and me have both spoken about, which countries were on the green list, who should be on the green list, why isn't there more on the green list, why isn't there reciprocal agreements between, if it's at a certain level, let people in if they've had the vaccinations, etc., or for the younger element if they've had the tests, etc. So younger, I didn't say young. So you're getting there, son. You're creeping there. That old Dorian Gray portrait, one of these days, is going to start to flicker. But it's a sad thing now as well, how the world seems to, you know, go 2 or 3 steps forward and then a little trip or a little stumble. You look at Israel. Do you know what I mean? The way that was lined up for everybody going on it. Now you've got the troubles there. You know, you've had some of the flights now cancelled and diverted from Tel Aviv to Ben Gurion and Ramon, and it's such a shame, Steve, isn't it? You know, we don't get a good clear run, do we?
Well, I would rather avoid the Israel topic because I've got an opposing view about that. I very much could talk about that topic for hours, so we'll stay away from Israel. Long live Palestine, I say. However, you know, I just can't believe that the oppressed are now being accused of by their oppressors of stoking this issue. This issue has been going on for years. It's not a religious issue; it's one of principle. Need we look at the borders before 1947, before the British Mandate ended? Dare I say? That said, I think the better example, Chris, probably is one to use is Australia, New Zealand. You know, the Australia, New Zealand travel corridor, or bubble as they were calling it. It was, you know, I don't know if I don't think it's quite been closed more than it's been open, but it's up and down more than a, you know, West End girls knickers. You know.
Oh, Salem, see the difference, mate? Little older, mature man says fiddler's elbow. There's the younger version.
Wow.
Rapidly moving over that. Yep.
But you understand. Sorry, you understand my point. But Chris, the bubble in effect has been you know, suffering as a result of political policy.
Yep.
Political policy is decided or is you know, I don't know if it's used data or otherwise, but they seem to decide on the hoof. So one case in Sydney results in the travel corridor being closed to New Zealand all of a sudden.
Yeah.
One case in Wellington results in a complete shutdown of the city.
Yeah.
This is in two countries at the arse end of the world that are completely closed to anybody from the outside, including until last week their own citizens, by the way. Unbelievable human rights issues there. Thankfully, the government has relented, but really a real challenge, Chris, in trying to maintain this stuff. I think what the UK government has done is learn from its mistakes last year, which was countries were going from green to red, green to red, green to red. You know, you'd leave for a week, leave for a week in Spain, and the day before you came back, now it's suddenly red, you go into quarantine for 14 days. What they're now doing is publishing 3 weekly results and updates, so that gives people a much better chance. That's not to say people won't still be caught out. They can and will still be caught out.
Clear.
Choose to travel, as you and I are doing next week. You know, you may well be caught out. But look, frankly, that's a risk that I accept, and I will not complain about if the rules change. But I think what we've got to do is, when you've got such high vaccination rates and you've got such low loads of the virus,
exactly.
We'll now be finding out, I think at 5 p.m, the Prime Minister and Chief Medical Officer will be updating us on the Indian variant of concern, which is, you know, putting some of the unlocking at risk, shall we say, but we shall find out when Mr. Johnson arrives in less than an hour's time. But
they're targeting and focusing the areas where it's going up. So they're speeding up the vaccines, they're doing a lot of things.
If they hadn't learned, and not just the UK government, but all, if the governments hadn't learned, Chris, in 14 months that they've been doing this now, something is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it comes with a lot of political risk. I think largely that was accepted last week in the local and regional elections that we had here, that the government had done the right thing and people were very supportive of Boris Johnson's government, despite what we might have heard about curtains and wallpaper, but people didn't seem to, you know, give two hoots about that. What they cared about was getting the economy back on its feet and getting things going again. I do think that that we've got to be careful about this politicking now between countries. So, you know, the UK say, well, Portugal, you're now on the green list, but Portugal say, oh yeah, but you still can't enter.
Exactly. I know. How can you say something's on the green list if it can only go halfway?
Well, because people coming from Portugal can avail of that. So that is fine. It's the same thing as people say, oh, why is Singapore on the, because Singapore doesn't accept anybody. You're so narrow-minded that you forget that the world exists beyond the United Kingdom shores. This is about bringing other people into our country as well. There's two-way traffic. You know, reminded. But then when you've been locked down in a prison cell for the last 13 months, as we all have, that people understandably want to get
away, get out. Yeah. And it's important as well. Yeah. No, it's crazy, mate. And you're talking there about Australia and New Zealand. And I don't know if you've seen or somebody told you about, you know, that video that was going around on the Qantas emergency landing at Brisbane. You know, where where they you know, they got the crew, you know, shouting brace, 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 cover your head and everything. And it was on there, you know, thank God, you know, great efforts from the crew and everything. It landed okay in the end and nobody was injured, but it was a -8. But, you know, it just went on, and, you know, people are talking about it so much. Oh my God, you know, and things like that can happen, and it ended okay. And things like that do happen. But all this issue, there are so many people now getting very tentative and nervous about when they're going to fly next and will it be okay. So that in itself, and with all the other the uncertainty, that's also stalling the recovery.
And let's not get started with vaccine hesitation.
Yeah,
I want to throttle those people.
Yeah, that's, I mean, really, it's mad.
I'm selfish. I watched a program the other night. I don't know if you saw it. It's called Hospital. It was on BBC Two, I think. It was an amazing program, testament to the work that that they were doing at it was the University College, Coventry, Coventry, UHC, and amazing to follow them in the weeks. Just recently filmed about the impact, not directly on COVID deaths, but the impact on other case management and other issues in health problems and disease and operations, and the impact to the. And one of the things I saw was some nurses, I have to say, it was a black nurse, and it's predominantly black and African or Middle Eastern, Asian, Middle Eastern, black, Asian minority ethnic. So I need to get my phraseology right, because the woke brigade will be on top of me like a ton of bricks. Yeah. But these black nurses that were refusing to get the vaccine done, and they were really, I mean, it was fear, Chris. They were fearful of the vaccine, and yet these people are in a hospital setting, in a medical environment where they are exposing themselves and their patients in the event that they don't get vaccinated. And I just can't understand and fathom why people that work in the profession would have any level of hesitation. I think actually there's been an element of too much information in this space. It seems that everybody now is an expert when it comes to vaccines. I never knew anything about vaccines before the last 12 months. In fact, I don't want to know anything more about vaccines ever again. I'm quite happy if the chief medical officer and the scientists and the JCVI decide that I'm getting a Chinese or a Saudi vaccine or an American vaccine, or dare I say a good old British vaccine in my arm. I'll let the experts decide on that, and I will continue to advocate for expertise in aviation rather than in vaccinations. But
it's also, Steve, it's also a shame as to the source of the fear and who stokes those fires, because that's it's crazy. It's wrong.
The bloody media do.
Yeah, it's all wrong. It's bullshit, and people shouldn't be given so much print to all that rubbish. But equally, and I know you disagreed with me before, but I'd say, like, if you're working in an environment where the safety of others has to be supported by your own self-safety, you've got to have a vaccine. If you don't have a vaccine, you ain't got a job. That's it. And I would do that. And the same thing with people coming into certain places and areas. I know you disagree with that. I'd say, right, I'm sorry, until everybody's got it, you've got your double vaccines and your vaccine, you can come in. End of story. Now let's start doing things properly. If you can't, it's a matter of time.
Yes, I'm coming around. I wouldn't say I'm sold on the idea in normal environment, to go downstairs to my pub or into Waitrose or whatever. I don't think that is something that is healthy. However, I think certainly in some environments, in some settings, for example, in hospitals, I was surprised that there was hesitation in a hospital environment with a nurse. That seemed to me. I would want, as a patient, to know that the same that they're vaccinated against hepatitis C, because why would they not be vaccinated against COVID-19? That's
exactly
an odd juxtaposition that nurse was putting herself at risk of COVID, but not through not Hep C, which is mandated for the job.
Yep. But Steve, it's because people haven't got the kahunas to actually make a simple statement, stand by it, end the story, get on with it.
Well, I was amazed, Chris, the chief executive of the trust, which I was happy to see was a medical professor, because most often these chief executives of NHS trusts are penny bloody pinching accountants, So good to see it was a medical director. But his view was, look, if I want to mandate this, I want people to do this and come on the journey and get it done on a voluntary basis. And he was asked, and he was sort of probed, if that's not going to work, would you mandate it? He said, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yes.
Now, that's for his hospital. But there surely has to be a national policy. He can't decide he can decide for his hospital, I suspect, because he's the boss. But surely there's going to be a national policy. The level of the barriers and the protections in place at University Hospital Coventry should be no different to my local hospital here, St Thomas's, where I happen to have a loyalty card. Having been a regular, or King's College or UCL or whatever, it should be no different, right? It should be the so consistency and compliance holistically, I think, is important. Now, you could extend it also to things like, well, what about the guys that are working in close proximity in the sheds?
Yeah,
the guys working in close, maybe the guys that are handling the pharma units, for example. What about the guys that are handling PRM customers at the airport? So PRMs generally are elderly, infirm, or
100%, Steve. But it should be done.
So I'm not coming round to your way of fully yet, Chris. But you see, your input and your wise counsel is starting to have an impact on my view.
You full of bloody. Anyhow, I'll take that. So we're not hugging, but at least we're holding hands. Not and for people thinking about that, not a great sight. I would agree.
We can hug again on Monday, and actually we can have a kiss then as well if you'd like.
We can what? Sorry.
We can hug and kiss, according to Prime Minister, on Monday.
Yeah. All right. Let's not go there, mate. No, but Steve, I still think people. It's all down to the blue and red boys. Do you know what I'm saying? They got to stop all this now debating. You can have a different point of view on every single thing that's there. And if you spend all the time debating it and everything, time now back to basics. Just stop it. If it makes sense and it's proven, you got to do it. If you don't do it, you're excluded. And if you're excluded, it's down to you. And I would be. That's it. Yeah. Simple as that now. Yeah. It's a little bit like being in a lifeboat, mate. You know, if you ain't rowing when you're asleep, we'll throw you over. Got to be
harsh but fair.
Yeah, it's got to be changed. Got to be changed now. Everywhere's got to do that now, and in business as well, it's got to be done. So, I just think it has to be. Now, what do we do? How do we end it? We got what was the other thing?
Well, coming up in 40 minutes' time, Chris. We should also probably pay homage and respects and wish all those celebrating Eid, wish them a very happy Eid with their families, Eid Mubarak, after in their second Eid during difficult times, I'm sure. So after the end of the long month or the holy month of Ramadan, I wish everybody peace, happiness, and hope we go strong into this new world beyond, well, actually the old world beyond COVID.
Yeah. No, it's so important to get back to people just realizing, you know, the real values of life and friends and family and stuff. And hopefully they'll appreciate that a lot more. But anyhow, it's always good to speak to you, sir. I shall look forward again to next week and touch base. We'll both be on foreign shores, and we'll see what there is to talk about next week.
Indeed.
One thing that we should start talking about, and we briefly covered it there as well, and you were talking about the learning experiences from what's happened in COVID, etc. There's been so many learning experiences now, and there's so many people that are left or put in positions where they haven't had learning or education support or guidelines. Yeah, that is so important coming forward. And also the level of people to come into our industry in the future, and like governments and our own as well, talking about, you know, apprenticeships and the masses who don't go to universities, etc. It's important that we now take up the opportunity to start teaching people about aviation before they leave full-time education, and to let them know that once they finish what they consider to be full-time education, that's only the beginning of the journey if you come into aviation, because there'll be a continual effective practical benefit of learning whilst you're earning.
Great point, Chris. Learning whilst you're earning. I like it, because you're never short of an analogy or a phrase or two, but that one works.
Oh, thank you for that.
I was stopped on the street yesterday. I was walking down Brompton Road, and young lads, and it was an amazing conversation which followed. You know, those sort of times when you just, you know, stopped in the street. He was wrapped up, baseball cap on, mask on, scarf on his neck. You wouldn't think it was May in London, but but anyway, he said he started talking to me about the problems of and challenges of knife crime in London. Yeah, we know there were for those that don't know, there were 800 young black kids, predominantly black kids, stabbed and killed last year on the streets of London, which is
800.
800, yeah.
Good Jesus, that's terrible.
Yeah, it just and a phenomenal number. 2 a day, basically. I think might not all be deaths, Chris. There certainly was 800 stabbings.
Yeah.
800 stabbings, he said, and he was working for a charity that supports these kids from 16 to 24 years old, because of the cuts to things like the social, community care, community budgets, and so on. Which difficult times, I accept a lot of that had to be done, but without an alternative, these kids are crime, and it's typically, I have to say, it's black on black gangs and young kids getting into all sorts of trouble. For the most part, I accept there will be exceptions to that, but this was the conversation we were having, and he'd come out the scheme himself. He'd been sort of going down a wayward path. And now he's helping these young kids again. And he spoke about adult learning and training and getting them back into the workplace and helping people through the system and apprenticeships and all that stuff. And I said, actually, I mentioned him the project that you and I are working on currently, about exactly that, Chris, around apprenticeship, around trying to capture some of the funds that are coming from central government now that they've announced in the Queen's speech this week. How to get that funding to the right places, to the people that matter, to help give people a career that is meaningful, where they can continually learn and educate themselves, but also earn a crust. So that's why I said that learning whilst earning, as you absolutely said, is the right thing. And he said, is it only just for sort of community enterprise? I said, no, this is an aviation. This is a business that we are in an aviation, work in aviation. And the interest that sort of sparked from that was immense. So I know they're doing it at a community level, but when you take the upper level, you sort of do it at an industry level, you think what to do for some of these guys and girls really just need an opportunity, Chris. It was very heartening. Of course, I walked away a few quid lighter as a result, but I'm not saying that for any. It wasn't me trying to be a hero. Reality is, I believe in the cause, and I think more needs to be done. And doing it through our industry, a very exciting industry, it's been through bloody turmoil in the last 12 months, and trying to bring some kids on this journey with us. That can help us, and we can help them. I think is a pretty remarkable opportunity. So maybe we do a bit of a longer session on that one of these days. But I think there's a lot to be had there.
Yeah, no, I agree, Steve, and just to make a difference to somebody, because no family, it doesn't matter color, religion, nothing. No family deserves to lose a young kid, as a result of violence and knife like that. So again, another T-shirt, change lives, have no knives. It's things have got to change, but to give them an opportunity to come into a business like ours and get a chance. And it's also, it's got competence mobility. So you never know where they might end up in the world as a result of getting a great foundation in the aviation industry. It's a wonderful opportunity, and companies should embrace bringing people in small groups, so you keep them together, teams, they feel comfortable. It's a lovely thing to do, change somebody's lives.
Yeah. I also to get rid of Khan to deliver a knife ban. Well,
my God, I can't. You know what I mean? I don't want to get involved in politics, but I think his name should be changed from Khan to Khan. That's terrible.
That young lad, he was probably early 20s. He could not believe that his fellow Londoners had re-elected that mayor that's presided over this damaging.
We talk about data so much. I mean, those figures, that statistic alone shouldn't be allowed. It's a terrible thing, And again, the families, the pain that they must go through, because it's bad enough losing somebody at the end of their life, but when somebody hasn't even started a life, you can't imagine it. Anyhow, let's hope with a little bit of care from everybody, things will get better. So thank you so much, as always, lovely boy, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Cheerio.
All the best, mate. Thanks.